Right. So this piece is called Not a Master. Maria is joining us. It's great. I know that I'm not a master, but it doesn't really matter. I got it done anyway. Care not what the master might say. How did the master become a master? Where did they start? Who conferred that title? Another master per se? To whom do I compare within the space of mastery? Do I shrink in fear? Masters looking down at me, a mere novice at this? Tiring not for mastery to be conferred on me, doing what's in front of me, step by step, getting good at it, knowing I'll get it done anyway. I'll read again. Not a master. I know that I'm not a master, but it doesn't really matter. I got it done anyway. Care not what the master might say. How did the master become a master? Where did they start? Who conferred that title? Another master per se? To whom do I compare within the space of mastery? Do I shrink in fear? Masters looking down at me, and men nervous at this? Tiring not for mastery to be conferred on me, doing what's in front of me, step by step, getting good at it, knowing I'll get it done anyway. Hi, Maria.
Hi, Frank.
Good to see you.
Hi, everybody.
Yeah. So what's coming up?
I think that's a very nice piece because it's something I often think about actually when, I just want to be good at what I do. And I don't necessarily compare myself to anything else but what I aspire, right? So then another person might come in and say, you've mastered this or that. And I kind of never feel that I have because I'm like kind of innately always thinking about it. There's always a level, like you say, is there a master somewhere? The same thing happens in life or love or, just things you do every day. But I think it's important not to, kind of not be a perfectionist and not put yourself in that pedestal so that you keep curious, always finding something new in what you're doing.
I like that idea. Thanks for sharing that. Anybody else?
A lovely piece, really, to bring it back to what is mastery and who defines mastery. And as Maria said, when we aspire to be the best version of us or do the best we can, that is a great way to live, really. Having a stickler mode, a perfectionist mode in me for most of my life, I was striving for perfection, but now I'm striving for improvement. And even that old adage, practice makes perfect, I've changed it to practice makes progress. Will I be a master? Am I defining the journey by when I feel I'll be a master, or am I enjoying the journey, kind of a thing? So I think that speaks into that. And I think when Maria said about curiosity, curiosity is a big thing with creativity. You need curiosity, and you need to have this thought that there's no right and wrong. You do it 1,000 times, 100 times, 1,000,000 times before, but I think it's like writing poetry. People sometimes say it's never finished. It's always kind of a work in progress. It's like, you can always go back to something and change a little thing, or it depends on who you are in that moment in time or that day or whatever. You can always see something different, and enjoying that process of change or tweaking rather than wanting something to be finished or mastered in a way. So it's an interesting topic and an interesting piece really to, so yeah.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that. Especially from that creative point of view as well, that perspective is helpful. Hey, Heather. I kind of posted that back in so you could have a look.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. Yeah, sorry. I was just dropping Tessie off, so.
Have you got anything on this?
Me? No, blimey. Mastery. Wow. It's a big ask. I did write a piece actually about kind of reaching a certain place of mastery, and I think the end story for that, or experience of that for me, was really around mastering the master that is me. I think that's how it ended.
Yeah.
So whether that speaks to it or not.
Well, I mean, it's everybody's perspective is welcome, right? So it's kind of that idea of, and I think it links with what's been said in the space already. That idea that if you try and create mastery through this comparing yourself with other people, then that there's a dynamic that introduces that may not be helpful. Maybe it might be helpful for some, depending on how they operate. I mean, I can say I wrote a piece from the point of view that if you use the pursuit of mastery to be the reason for not doing something, then in essence, how do you get better at it? And the idea that if you think that you shouldn't do it because you're not yet a master, again, that kind of doesn't work. So it's the idea of, okay, again, I think, Maria, you're alluding to this. Mastery is subjective. What someone calls mastery, someone else might not call mastery. Again, going back to what Heather was saying, there's levels to everything. So it's like, how do you, you know? So, and in the context of creativity and being able to create from a place of freedom, not needing to have mastery to do something is important, and not keep comparing yourself to other people who might be doing it longer or doing it in a different way is also helpful. So that kind of was the thing behind that. Rackle said, comparing oneself creates uncertainty to one's own great creativity. If one has nothing to compare, one will be a master of one's own masterpiece, which again says close to what Heather was saying. To conclude, with all masters, what we created for allows ourselves to. I assume she ran out of words there, but I think I get the gist. But that's interesting, actually. It seems we're all reasonably aligned on that. But I like that idea of your own mastery of what you do and how you do it. I think is helpful. I think it's also is how you're framing this helping you be more creative. Is it giving you the freedom to express yourself fully? So it could be mastery, it could be anything, but is the way you're framing this really helping you lean into the fullness of what is coming and present for you to do it in a way that feels authentic and genuinely you? I think is interesting. And to go from one, I don't know whether you call it one extreme to the next. So I'm going from mastery to this idea of false modesty. So let's see. I, the one you failed to see, because I chose to filter me through a fog of mystery, deny what was there for me, the truth of the boundless me, afraid my own light would blind me, obscured from those I'm to help see, the infinite wealth of you and me. I'll read it again, false modesty. I, the one you failed to see, because I chose to filter me through a fog of mystery, denying what was there for me, the truth of the boundless me, afraid my own light will blind me, obscured from those I'm to help see, the infinite wealth of you and me. And Heather had a nice smile there because she knows that this whole idea of infinite wealth, she knows where it comes from. But yeah, what are you hearing?
I think for me, the truth of the boundless me is a line that is beautiful in all of that, that our potential, if we only could recognize our full potential, but there's so much, it's in that getting out of our own way, like we were saying in the last one, that perfectionist mode, that program in us for different reasons. There's also a mode of that hyperachiever. I've spoken to people who, like, if I'm not good at it, I drop it. But creativity and the curiosity and that getting it wrong is the beauty of the creative process. When you think about some of the greats that people study now, even painters, in all aspects of creativity, musicians, painters, poets, whatever, that are being studied, a lot of those lives, they didn't realize, they didn't even believe how good they were or how great they were, or that one day their work would be studied. They were expressing themselves, really, heart, soul, mind, body. They were working within a time. So I think if we can get out of our own way, we can find the truth of the boundless, the parts of us, you know, that the limitless, really, potential within us. If we could only reach that, we'd be unstoppable, or it'd be unbelievable what we could do, I suppose. So yeah, a nice piece.
No, I hear what you're saying there. Yeah. Yeah, idea of leaning into boundlessness. Wow. Anybody else?
I was thinking about the name of this, the false modesty. I think that's interesting because I think there's false modesty of, you know, being actually aware that you're good at something and not wanting to kind of admit it.
Mm.
You know, it's taken me a long time when people give compliments to actually accept them, you know, and say thank you. Instead of saying, no, this is just, you know, if I photograph, it's like, well, nature did it. I just took the photo, you know? So, and then there's the other kind of modesty where you don't even realize that there's so much potential and you're kind of just like innocent in that modesty. So both are, you know, as relevant, but I think one is kind of shrouded by ego and the other one is more like there's still that infinite universe in you and creativity to discover.
I love that distinction. I put the title there to be provocative. That's
Yeah, I thought so. It's good. So
that's the idea of it. But yeah, I love what you're saying about there is that perspective where it's just recognition of there is no limit to this. It's just how much you open up and let that what wants to flow from you come through you, which is a foundation we laid in our earlier session, the last session we did about that realizing that creativity works more and gives you more scope when you see yourself as a conduit of something rather than the source of something. Because when you become the source of something, it may improve your ego or it may boost your ego, but it could limit your output because all of a sudden it's now limited by only what you can conceive. But rather, if you see yourself as a channel, as long as you're open, then you're open to receiving and being faithful in communicating what comes through you. So there is that. There is that. So it's leaning into that. What does that make possible if you embrace the truth of the boundless you in that context? And I like what you said about the resistance to receiving compliments, and that manifests a lot. And that's what people term as modesty, or being modest. But actually, when you think about it, I remember from my Christian background, one thing I always recognized about Christ was he would say who he was. He never had any. Whereas a lot of people who are religious seem to think modesty is part of what's there, but he never denied who he was, and it actually enraged the Pharisees and the Sadducees because said, "How dare he say he's that?" Guy goes, "Well, you want me to lie to you? I'm telling you that's who I am." I mean, you can take it or leave it, but I'm telling you that's who I am. You know. Some nodding from Heather there. Did you want to kind of add to that?
It's obviously synchronicity going on with me, because a piece I wrote in my journal today was about, you know, how the all kind of the core of all suffering is the need to fit in, and false modesty actually gets created from that, doesn't it? You know, it's kind of, you know, if we accepted all of our individualization and felt deeply connected to kind of the one source that's not us, right? Us being rather, like you say, the conduit, then it's almost like a matter of fact of course I'm infinite. Like, of course I'm boundless. Like, and any time that I try and be something other than that is where the suffering shows up, right? Which is a pain in the ass. It speaks to what you said to me, Frank, about that summit interview, right? Because you were like, you just won't be boxed in, Heather. And I'm like, no, I won't. I just won't. And there was a session in there around making it visible this week, and I remember thinking, wow, the first two people that have run their program sessions have brought slides and like put some like kind of intellect and intelligence like models behind the thing they wanted to share, and they literally just opened the session and shared information, right? Shared concept. And I'm sitting there going, that's not my session. That's not what my session is going to be like. Right. And I'm like going, oh, like, and the old me would have been, oh shit, right? The old me would have been, wow, I better just put some work into this session rather than just showing up and asking a question in the room, right? And it's like, no, no, I prefer my spaces to be boundless, right? To explore, to be open, to be free. And it was just good to see the difference. And no, I won't be boxed in because I am boundless and infinite.
Yeah, and that is a truth that we, you know, if we embrace it, then it's kind of the question is, what does that make possible for us if we embrace it?
Yeah, what else is possible now? Definitely. Yeah.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that. Anybody else on this? I did want to talk about this line, afraid my own light will blind me. I think is an interesting one. The idea of, even if you saw it, so going back to what Maria was saying, some people see it but don't want to admit it because of that false modesty. Some people innocently don't see it. But then if you see it, but then you're afraid of what that might mean about you. Because again, when we look at the concept of modesty, culturally speaking, it's the idea that you then put your head above the parapet. What does that make you vulnerable for? Might people start shooting you down? Because bear in mind, if you embrace the infinite and boundless you, and someone else who is on the other side of the spectrum, who feels they're the worm of the earth because that makes them more spiritual or more humble or whatever they want to call it, then all of a sudden it's this idea of, wait a minute, they then feel uncomfortable by your presence. And therefore the intuition for them is to try and pull you back down, right? Now, if you want to avoid that experience of them trying to pull you back down because they might try and do it in ways that are uncomfortable for you, then you might become afraid of this idea of embracing your infinite and boundless you and decide that actually maybe it's better to understate it and not step into those spaces. So it's just an interesting observation to become mindful for yourself. And how are you experiencing that in yourself and in your body as well? How are you embodying that when you have opportunities to step out, and what does that begin to mean, and listening to that, and then really working through that, identifying it for what it is and embracing who you are anyway. I sense you might want to say something there, Maria.
Oh, that's funny. Yeah, I mean, I was thinking about, you know, I was taken back actually years to a 360-degree kind of you know, performance review, or you know, people could actually say what they thought of you and how they saw you. And that was the first time I was in a really you know, in technology field. I was a woman, I was a manager, and somebody put down, you're a typical global services manager, professional services manager. And I was like, what does that even mean? You know, because I was not a consultant. I didn't come from an engineering background. I came from a totally different space. And it took me years to understand what that person had meant, you know, because I kind of thought like, okay, now I'm boxed. Now somebody boxed me in, right? You're typical this. And it was a great challenge for me to get over that and just be me. You know, kind of let the infinite guide me and not care about if somebody is seeing me in that box. And I think for everybody, it's so important not to let other people categorize you, you know, and not be too modest, you know, about what you're doing. You have to be proud of it as well, in a good way. And it's funny, all that came back to me while we were talking.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that. And I love that perspective you brought there. Don't let someone else define for you who you should be. Now, I'm always careful with those statements to make it clear to people that you can't stop people from classifying and doing all that. It's whether you take it on, it's whether you begin to believe in what they say because they said so, which is a two-edged sword, right? Because we love the compliments. We love when they say things that agree and resonates. And then we might not like it when they say something that doesn't. But ultimately, it's not their role or responsibility to define how we show up in the world. It's kind of as we evolve and begin to discover ourselves. And part of my purpose and mission in life is to call out the limitless and the boundless in people, because I believe we all have that. I don't think some special person is given this and some special person is given that. I think that potential is available to all of us if we choose to embrace it, simply because we are self-fulfilling prophecies as human beings. And what that means for us is that if we believe it, it becomes true for us until we evolve that belief, and then something else becomes true for us. Therefore, that is offering us a great opportunity to embrace boundlessness and be boundless in the world, because that means the way in which we serve the world becomes limitless and boundless rather than the other way around. We're all ticking time bombs waiting to explode into the world with our boundlessness and timelessness and infiniteness. Right. Yeah, go on.
I just wanted to say, I think for me, I think through life, we have this phrase, you know, fear of failure. And it's not until the last few years that, you know, I believe that we also fear success, but we don't talk about that as much. So blinded by your own light kind of speaks a little bit into that for me, that sometimes when we do step into that, what the outcome will be and what changes that will make for us in our lives and the people around us. And also the thing Maria mentioned about ego, I think getting to know ourselves and realizing that ego is when we're coming from that low self-esteem, which sometimes can play into that modesty, you know, oh, well, I'm not that good, or there's a voice inside that's saying I'm not worthy, or I'm not deserving, or I'm not good enough, which is low self-esteem, which is still the ego. But I was brought up thinking that ego was the people who thought they were amazing, you know, that just were cocky and arrogant, and that was ego. And but in actual fact, it's the spectrum. It's one extreme to the other. And I think we know in life that when we're living from those extremes, we're never happy. Whereas there's a balancing part in the middle where we can find happiness, and we can find our joy and our success, and our limitlessness and our boundlessness. But other people who are living in the extremes will have their own things to say for different reasons, but we'll never know what their reason is. But it just reminded me of the fantastic story about the couple and the donkey, and they're walking along, and they're not using the donkey, and somebody says how silly that they're not kind of using the donkey to carry them, and then the man is on the donkey, and then they criticize the woman for, you know, the man's on the donkey and he should be letting the woman on the donkey, and then the next time the woman's on the donkey and the man's not, and then they're saying that somebody else is saying he should be, and the next thing they're both on the donkey and they're saying the poor donkey, and then they're carrying the donkey and somebody says, oh, silly them carrying the donkey. So it's just a lovely little story of no matter what you do or how you live your life, or there'll be somebody who criticizes or who has something to say about the way you're doing it. And the only thing to learn to do for happiness is to be true to yourself and know yourself, so you can be true to that limitlessness and boundlessness, and realize that I suppose what other people think of us is really none of our business.
It's an interesting one, and I love the perspective you give there. You can't satisfy everybody because everybody has their own lens from which they look at life and do things. But you're more likely to be swayed by what people think if there's less of you connected with who you think and know about yourself. And I think that's where the work starts, is when you get clear on your purpose and why you're here and what you're here to do and how you're here to be. That gives you now a way to filter out what's coming at you, because then you can see, okay, well, that's their projection on it, but does that resonate with who I am and how I'm showing up in the world? Because if someone else becomes an expert on your life, then that's an interesting kind of situation to end up in, really. Yeah, that's interesting. That's an interesting one. Anything else on that before I read the next piece?
Yeah, I was gonna say it feels more true for me that our only purpose in life is to be truth itself. In our highest expression, I get to our highest expression, or yeah, it feels more true to me right now that purpose is more about really utilizing this body, or body mind, or however you want to term it, you know, in its purest form, and getting to that place. And actually it's the kind of the mission more that allows us to anchor in.
Mm.
But obviously I'm musing, as you know I do, so maybe something else will come through as you read.
Yeah, which I think actually the next piece speaks a bit to that, so that might activate something as well. This one is called I Have a Dream. I have a dream. The dream has me. Even death cannot stop what I'm here for. When breath is gone, the dream lives on as others' inspiration. I'll read that again. I have a dream. I have a dream. The dream has me. Even death cannot stop what I'm here for. When breath is gone, the dream lives on as others' inspiration.
I think that's a beautiful piece. I really love that. That's a beautiful poem.
Mm.
And I can easily see that that is, that's one of your legacies, is being able to express, those emotions and concepts, because I don't think there's any other way of saying what you're saying here. I was in a situation myself where I was in a very tough position in the hospital, and they weren't sure if I would make it or not. And that was the point when I came back from that. I wanted to share more inspiration, because I wanted to make sure that people had that and they could express that or share that or just be encouraged and maybe find creativity out of creativity, So sharing more so that other people could share more, and sharing more love. And it's not easy, but that's what that's one of the moments where I really felt that the dream lived on. So even though I wasn't there, my dream was strong enough to bring me back, So I really fought my way back. So I felt that 2 weeks that I spent in the ICU, the dream supported me and not the other way around.
That is so powerful. I mean, the chances of us having that kind of story to really speak into this piece is such an honor. And yeah, I really felt that when you talked about that experience you had. I've never had such an experience, but I'm so glad we still have you here.
Yeah.
So glad.
Thank you.
Sorry, I've gone somewhere quiet. I hope there's no background noise.
Yeah, no, go.
Oh gosh, just hearing who was that just spoke?
Maria.
Yeah, Maria. It came to light. Yeah, I didn't understand the poem straight away because I felt there's something missing. When you said that you have a dream, the dream has me, even death cannot stop. And I'm like, well, where's that dream gone? Did you share it with somebody for others to inspire it? Then after I heard what Maria was saying, it kind of dawned on me that my dream was to be a fashion designer. And I'm like, well, but I never went into it. I went into technology instead. And then looking back as she was talking, I realized, but I was still living my dream. I was still dressing, inspiring others with fashion, just through, socializing. I used my design in designing software. And when it came to clothing, I was still living my dream. So people will come, like my children, and they will come to ask for advice, come to me for advice. So it's not just that I was living my dream without knowing I was living my dream. When I look back, and now I am, due to sustainability, I am designing clothes as a hobby, using clothes that needs repairing and design outfits with it. Helping to share, wastage, to avoid wastage, and to for those who, and I'm looking at mending clothes as well, and sharing that with friends and relatives who are also looking to do the same thing in this day and age. So this dream of mine, even though I thought I'd be a fashion designer reaching high in the skies, I was actually living it. When I look back, that's what this comes to mind with me now. So that I know that when I go, I see what I taught my children, how to dress and how to look for certain fashion wear. I see it in them now.
Yeah. Thanks for sharing that. And it's interesting because that speaks to the point that the dream has you, and the whole idea of sometimes how we frame it. Going back to what we were talking about master, being a master and stuff like how we frame it. Sometimes disconnects us from the end points of the reason why we've got the dream, which is just to be of service, which is just to be something that makes a difference in someone else's experience of life. And that's what the inspiration piece is about. But anyway, I won't go too much into that because I want to hear what everybody has to say about it. But thanks for that, Raquel. Anybody else on this?
For me, I think that inspiration and the dream, and it's so broad. And thank you for sharing your story, Maria, because as Frank said, it's not every person that you can hear stories like that from, and that perspective. For me, as a writer, as a poet, as a new writer and poet, I've been researching a great uncle who lived 100 years before me, who I had grown up hearing he was a writer and a poet. And it wasn't until the last few years that I got really interested in this man. So I decided to research him. And he didn't publish really. He contributed to the newspaper and stuff, but he didn't really publish in a book. And I've been trying to find out as much as I can, but it's limited basically. And so even now I have this huge desire to publish his writings and kind of incorporate in mine. And this makes me feel, I've been doing a lot of talking as well, going home to Ireland and speaking to elderly people and hearing stories and how information gets lost in generations because the people who knew the information is gone, but how sometimes, even though somebody's long gone, their work can have such an impact on somebody's life. And sometimes maybe somebody's dream didn't play out in theirs, but may play out in somebody else's, incorporating their life, as Frank said, the inspiration that they inspire. He has inspired me so much, but also my writing is very similar. It was kind of when I started reading and the goosebumps of like, oh my God, it's in my veins in a way, for somebody who told herself all her life that she wasn't creative, because I had put creativity with painting or some artistry like that. So I think what speaks to me a bit, I love that poem actually. It's beautifully short and sweet, and it says so much about legacy, what the legacy we leave behind is. And as Raquel said, sometimes we're living out our dream, but we don't realize because our dream equals something bigger. Like you said, that mastery, but when we chunk it down and we break it down and we look at it and we stand back, we realize that actually our dream is playing out in different ways in our life. And I do believe that sometimes some greats and some works that weren't, what's the word, accepted even, or weren't in this life realm, came to pass in another time that made such a difference. So it's letting go of that attachment to destination, the mastery, the what we think it's supposed to be, and let it be what it's supposed to be, because it may not even be that the work we're working on, that we want it to be something, it's not its time. So I think what I've realized with creativity as well is things have their time and their place, and they will find it, and it may not be when we think it's supposed to be, or we desire it or want it to be. So yeah, a nice piece about legacy, dreams, inspiration, and all that. Thank you.
You're welcome. I love the reference to legacy, because that's the underlying thing that we all live a legacy of sorts. Is like, what legacy is that? And the fact that someone that comes to mind every time we talk about this kind of concept is Martin Luther Jr. Actually, his dream never happened necessarily in his day, but he died, and some might consider it was a failure, but actually more people were inspired in his death than they were in his life. A lot more people were inspired, and even till today, people who are fighting for that cause are still being inspired by things that he said and the way he showed up. back then, and he had no control, like Patricia was saying, over any of that. But the point was allowing the dream to express itself through you in the way that it wants to express itself to you. Trust me, will leave a legacy of some sort. And we have no control over what that will be, the reach and the extent of that. It's you know, and even death doesn't end it, because then you have infected other people. No, but none of us live in an isolated energy bundle. We all generate energy that affects other energies and goes out there and does something, which is the whole point of service, really, is to take your energy and present it and make it available so that it can touch and resonate with who it resonates with, and begin to create that confluence that could create something else. I mean, what we're doing here is all part of that process as well. Anything from you, Heather, on that?
I think it's all been said, to be honest. Beautiful, yeah.
Yeah.
The poem is phenomenal. It, in fact, actually, you know what it speaks to is our dreams can really feel really far away. And if I take my dad's life, for example, you know, some would say that he's never lived his dreams because he, let's say, sacrificed a lot of his life to bring us up, right? Us children up. And therefore, all the things that maybe he wanted to do with his life specifically didn't really come to fruition, or so he thinks, right? So like the illusion is that maybe, you know, he didn't achieve or have his big dreams come to life in his kind of prime, because he's now 75. And actually, what's amazing about that is he's now in the position to have that be seen through us instead. And I think, like Patricia said, where the generational kind of bloodline flow, let's say, I guess how he was shown to live his life was not specifically about dreams. It was more about putting other people first, I suppose. And so if that's the only legacy that he was left, like to live through and experience and kind of see through till the end, is that actually his dream anyway? You know, was it his dream anyway to bring up his children on his own and see them flourish because of the way he brought them up so individually? And yeah. So I guess my sentence is, sometimes what we think are our dreams are actually someone else's. Like, how do you know that the dream that you hold is for you? I've actually answered that question a few times, but prevalent in a generational kind of flow, I think, to consider.
Yeah, that certainly opens up some questions, I'd say, in terms of how can you work out the dream. And I think that the thing for me is that line that says the dream has me. That there are framings of things we hold that we think that is the dream, and the dream is something else. But actually, when you're open and you're not resistant, what wants to come through you is more likely to be what the dream is.
Yeah.
And it is how easy is it to stop that from happening? Because every time you find that space where you might want to lean into, it comes up again. As like, yeah. And if we allow ourselves, give ourselves to that, the idea is that it will inspire others. Because an effect I have seen my work have is that I don't proselytize to anybody to do poetry, but just by sharing my poetry, people are inspired to write poetry, just like that. It's just not, there's nothing I control, there's nothing I can stop, but it is what it is. So therefore, I think if we're just true to what wants to come through us without feeling the need to be in control, we drop the illusion of control. I think that this will be true of all of us. That's kind of my reading.
Yeah.
Absolutely, absolutely. I agree with you on that, Frank. You said you hit the hammer on the nail. Thanks for that. Because even just listening since I've been on this group meetings, I've been inspired to write and talk poetry without even knowing it, because I'm beginning to understand how I feel. It's a better way for me to express myself without realizing it. So I find that I'm a more artistic type person, I've realized. So that poem you just read, The Dream Has Me, I understand it totally now. Yeah. I look back and I say, yeah, I am living my dream. Now, who's to say that if I became a fashion designer, what I dreamt was manifested into somebody famous designer or whatever, would I be happy? Maybe not. Maybe the dream I had was to design, and I'm saying it was, and to share it, and to share my ideas with others. And I was doing it. When I look back, I can see that, I have been designing throughout my life, and I have shared that with others and my ideas. And as for the inspiration, like I said, I just hope, when I look back, when I look for now is that living my life, the dream is in me, so I am living my dream. And if I am true to myself, and I keep reflecting back to make sure that whatever I'm doing, what am I going to be leaving behind? However I connect with people, what am I leaving behind? Am I going to leave some sort of legacy? And if not, well, why not? I'm asking myself. Do I want to leave something behind so that, something good behind to inspire and to make that person a better person? And I'm really thinking of, in a Christian kind of way, am I going to lead somebody towards God, for instance? That's my kind of objective.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that, Raquel. I think your background noise somehow is filtering through there, but yeah, thanks for sharing that. I think the invitation here really is that I always have my writing so it doesn't leave people with a lot of emotional burden. So the invitation here is not to try and control what inspiration or whatever there is to say, give yourself to what is wanting to come up through you. And I guarantee you that will create the inspiration it needs to create. And if you're fortunate enough feedback will get to you for you to recognize that. But even if you don't, just trust and believe that if you're being true to who you are meant to be here on this earth, you are inspiring people and you will leave a legacy of sorts. That would be my invitation. I got one final piece and then I think that will see us. This one is called Deserving. I just want to kind of see if we can find something here because it's another thing that's interesting about how we relate to each other. Deserving. I do deserve, or I do not deserve. Who makes the rules? Please do observe. Who gets to choose exactly what we deserve? It is of no one's preserve. Let's quit the ruse and be as we are, no longer tied to deserving. Deserving. I do deserve, or I do not deserve. Who makes the rules? Please do observe. Who gets to choose exactly what we do? It is of no one's preserve. Let's quit the ruse and be as we are, no longer tied to deserving.
I think that's amazing. And I think the tying in with those poems and the dreams and the like I mentioned earlier, those voices that are in that inner critic of like, I'm not worthy, I'm not deserving, I'm not good enough. And I think speaking into what Heather was saying, it really kind of resonated with how people live their lives. When you spoke about your dad, I think about my dad who died in 2017, my mum who's 87. And I think the big thing about this is staying curious and staying open, learning and practicing, because we're not taught it growing up. We grow up in a world which tells us who we should be, how we should behave in circles and this and that. You get the compliant people, you get the rebels, you get the person like myself in between both. 1 minute I'm complying, the next minute I'm a rebel. I mean, and that causes confusion in our mind, but it also, the behavior is not the person. Our behavior equals something to somebody else. And then we're not good, or we're not this, or we're not. And then we comply and we live a life which is not entirely our own. It can be our children's, it can be our partners, it could be different things. But remembering that as long as we practice being curious and being open, and as I even say to my mum when she now goes into those things, oh, it's too late for me, oh, I'm too old. I'm like, mother, you could be here a year, 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, who knows how long you got. And there's an awful lot you can do if you stay open and stay curious about life. And, you know, but one thing is for certain, the negative talk will take you under, it will suffocate you, and there's no room for growth. Whereas if you stay open, and she's really embracing it and having great fun with it, which is an amazing thing. She's an inspiration to me, actually. So I think we are conditioned in life. We can't deny, and especially what's going on in the world today, we now know, and there's an awakening happening with people that we know we're being conditioned. We're given emotional crutches. We're being backed into a corner where we don't feel like we have the power, because people who feel empowered, they know themselves, they're less likely to be vulnerable and to be manipulated. So the powers that be need us in a space where we can be manipulated. And if we don't think we're good enough or worthy or deserving, we can easily be manipulated. So I think the whole thing about this for me is, no matter what the time in life, I work with people who say I'm too old and they're in their 30s, and then some are in their 60s and say they're too old, and then my mum is in her 80s and says she's too old, and I'm like, everybody's saying they're too old because it's all a conditioning. But so I think staying open, staying curious, and feeling excited about leaving a legacy. There's a lot of hate in the world. There's a lot of negativity, but even leaving that legacy of some inspirational positivity and curious and openness, and that it's never too late, living our life, being us really, and getting to know us. And I think that's the amazing thing, really.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that. Thanks for sharing that. Yeah, a lot of these things are subjective, isn't it? And that's the invitation. Anybody else?
I think it's a good, you know, I love the way you're tying in the mastery and you know, coming down to deserving, because it's almost like a backward journey, you know, coming from a master to drive and deserve it in a way. But you know, it's a good question to ask, because we are often judgmental as well, you know, and we cannot truly be creative and truthful as long as we're judgmental. And believe me, I live right next to, you know, Russia. There's a lot of reasons for us to, you know, think about what they or somebody would deserve. But I'm always thinking like, it's not my thing. It's not my job. You know, there's somebody higher out there in the universe who will make that judgment at the end of the day. Our job is just to, you know, inspire, to keep our ground and to be objective as much as we can, because the judgment will not bring anyone any good. Justice will, you know, that's a good thing. Love and justice, but then anything beyond that, it's I feel that it's beyond me. And every time I feel that way, I try to, you know, kind of come from a neutral zone and think about the light of everything. that everything needs to be as light as possible. You know, in that spectrum, the highest spectrum of light we can reach, and share that instead of thinking about the burdens in the past and the present and the potential future we cannot predict in every way. But yeah, it says a lot, this very short poem. Big things in it.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that. And I hear that whole piece around, you know, when you begin to feel yourself carry that weight, you know, and it's just that idea of leaning into, you know, what's true for you in that.
Yeah.
Anybody else?
I have no idea why this line came to me. It's been in front of my book for about 2 months.
Okay.
And it's stop robbing people of their feelings
Okay.
just because you think they don't deserve to feel that or this, or because all you're doing is helping them preserve or save those feelings for another fucking time.
No, I get you.
Right. And even that's excitement, you know, or sadness, or all of those things, and tied it all together with obviously your themes today. Like when I think about us being able to master our own emotions, our own energy, our own light, our own greatness, our boundless, like all of those things, you just think, wow, what really is possible, you know?
Yeah.
So
I love that. And something that she jumped out to me was the use of mastering of those things. And I think that can easily be misconstrued as controlling them rather than giving them space to be and not being freaked out by them.
yeah, or feeling like we don't deserve, like why is it me that feels like this, like when they're all happy and I'm all pissed off, like, and like they should be sad because in Maria's case, you know, Maria maybe should be like feeling a little bit disappointed or sad or frightened or scared given where you live, and it's just like, no, don't rob me of my happiness.
Yeah, it is an interesting one, and this particular piece on deserving it came up specifically because of the things we stop ourselves from experiencing because we believe we don't deserve, and
That's where, yeah.
And my thing was, if we took the axe to the root of the tree and got rid of the concept of deserving, what does that make possible? Because if deserving is not explicit, just like perfectionism, nobody can agree on a clear delineation of this is who deserves what and why. You know, you go to 1 million people, you get 1 million different variations. Therefore, it can't be real. It must be a construct that we've created. What if we get rid of that construct completely and we don't judge anything by deserving or not deserving? If you're here and it's available, then it's yours. There's no I deserve, I don't deserve. It's yours. You know, it's like saying I deserve air, I don't deserve air. That's not how the universe is created. The universe is created with air. You got something, equipment to breathe it in, you use it. It's there. So that was really the invitation for the deserving, because again, how it fits into the context of creativity is that sometimes we deny our creative abilities, our creative intuition, by saying, oh, well, I'm not like this person. I'm not a master like this, so I don't deserve to bring this into the world. So you cower from it, you move away from it. If we remove the whole idea of deserving and say, if it's here, if it's present, if it's available, then it can be through me. So to kind of use a dominant, you know, there is no deserving, it just is. We are. And the possibility exists for us. And if it's resonating from within here, for us not to be in the way of it, but just to let it come out. That it's a bit of a long dad right there, but that's kind of the
But also without evidence, Frank.
Yeah, well,
Zero evidence. Like
Yeah.
Patricia is in a really good position.
Yeah.
She has evidence of someone in her bloodline that's this artistic writer, creator, etc., etc.
Yeah.
And I'm sure we would find if we looked other, you know, in our bloodline to be the evidence that this is me, so to speak, right? Or this is for me. And it's like, actually, if we just believe,
yeah.
yeah,
If it's here, if it's showing up here, and that's the thing, the dream has you. If it's showing up here, then the only thing stopping it is us having all these thoughts in our head about I deserve, I don't deserve, I'm a master, I'm not a master, I'm this, I'm that, and that. The rules, this is how it should be, as in Raquel's case, this is what it should look like, blah, blah, blah. If we get rid of all of them and just lean into the space of what's available and be faithful to just to give it voice, give it, I think someone did mention our temple, our body it was you, Heather, wasn't it? Is what we have to manifest and to be on mission to serve. So it's out there in the universe, and the universe is choosing you as the vessel to bring it forth. Just trust, accept, and let that be. And that will be enough, I think. And that would inspire. And that will make a difference, and so on and so forth. And that sounds like a great place to bring it to an end. Thank you very much, everyone.